We hear about mindfulness and vipassana, or insight meditation, which is a mindfulness-based practice, but we don't hear a lot about concentration because for a long time it's just people weren't teaching it, because the primary thing about that is that it has to be practiced a lot. And so the main thing is to practice, but in reality, that's how the Buddha actually woke up, through concentration. And when he was on his search, he had a couple of teachers, not at the same time, but a series. He went through one teacher and then to another, and both of them were teaching him concentration. But the Buddha, he was very adamant on waking up, like finishing the whole thing, the whole journey. So he thought, well, let me use this concentration, because he was very, very good at it at this point. Let me use this concentration to go into go within and see what's going on within my mind, the Buddha's mind. And that was his path to awakening. That's how he woke up. And so it's very powerful. And actually, when you read the sutras, the Buddhist sutras, they talk more about jhana than they do about sati or vipassana. Jhana comes up a lot, that word jhana, and these deep states of concentration. So it's very important that we know about it, even if we don't want to practice 3 hours a day. We should still understand the practice and understand what jhana is, because I think a lot of us actually come closer than we think to these deeper states of concentration, but if we don't understand them and know anything about them, it'll be like missed opportunity. It's like we won't understand, we won't recognize, this concentration factor. And I don't know, enough said, I guess, because Ryan will say more about it beginning on Monday. Ms. Inga?
Yeah, if you can explain the difference between concentration and what we do in the past.
Concentration
in plain English, if I may say.
Right, in plain English too. Do you want to do that? You want to explain that, Ryan?
The difference between concentration and
vipassana. Yeah, so, how do you actually practice them differently?
Well, a very easy way of saying it is that, when we're practicing mindfulness or vipassana, we're on the breath, and that's our meditation object, right? Mm-hmm. As soon as something comes up for us, whether it's a bodily sensation or a feeling or a mind state, we become aware of that, right? Yeah. And as soon as that comes up for us, we sort of hold it, and we look at it and investigate it a little bit. But our intention's a little bit different when we practice concentration, and what we're going towards is single point concentration or single point focus, to the exclusion of pretty much everything else. And so when these other things come up for us, we start recognizing that they're pulling us away. So we can kind of think of concentration as kind of being the anchor for our mindfulness. And our mindfulness kind of uses that concentration and develops wisdom from it. So meditation is those two parts for sure. Without concentration, we can't have mindfulness, and vice versa. And so that's kind of the practice. When these things come up for us, we basically just ignore them to keep coming back to our meditation object. And eventually what happens is everything in the mind really calms down, like this jar of what was muddy water over here. And that's what happens. So you can think of concentration as if you have a concentration of something. Not that orange juice from concentrate is good, but think about a concentration. And so that's what happens to us, is we become really focused and purified. Our mind becomes purified. And it just kind of drops everything away. And through the process, we naturally get this joy and this happiness that come out, because we're not somewhere else. We're not in the past. We're not in the future. We're right on that single point of concentration.
But if you're interested in that, by all means, I'll put some flyers in the back there, or you can ask me for one before you leave if you're interested. That gives some information. Otherwise, you can go to Meditation Learning Center and find out more information about that as well. Also, so that's on the 11th, and then on the 12th, NT Hatigi is going to be doing some free workshops starting on the 12th. That's on Tuesday night. They start at 7 and get done at 8:30. He's going to be talking about, he's got a book called Explore Within, A Journey to Inner Peace, and he's going to be working off of that book. And like I said, they're free workshops. We like to see everybody register if you can, but if not, be sure to come in. The first one's on the 11th. Can you hand me that jar? You guys were talking about it earlier, and Ryan brought it up. Thank you. Thank you.
Replaced me.
Oh, really? Really? Yeah. Well, I should have had this young lady.
I know. She's younger.
But some of you have seen this. This is just a jar of water. Looks like this on the bottom of the soil that actually came from our yard in Gilbert.
Oh, wow.
And so, it looked like it was really nice, pure, clear. You could see right through it. But it's pretty yucky now. It looks like the Verde River a little bit, actually. If you ever kayak the Verde, it looks a little bit like that. But it's all stirred up, and this is a good representation for the mind. A lot of you people have seen me pull this out before, but I'll put it.
You want to put it back for me?
I'll put it right up here. So the idea is that by the time we're done meditating here,
It'll be clear.
it'll be settled,
Just like all
like our minds should be, and it's really a good representation of what meditation is all about. We come here to meditate. We come with friends, and some of us have a really good established practice. Some of us might be fairly new to meditation. But none of that really matters. But we come here to still the mind. We find some benefit in meditation, or we hope to find some benefit in meditation. And basically what happens is we come into this state of presence, and it's a stillness of mind. When we do this practice and we come in and we trust that, it feels like we're sitting in that presence. Something will come up, and if it came up when we weren't so still and present, it might be something that bothered us, but when we're present, it'll come up and it doesn't have the same effect on us. Then we can actually take a look at it. We can investigate it just briefly, and then we come back to our meditation object, which is generally the breath. We use the breath as the object here. When I talk about the breath, I talk about the meditation object. And when we do that in our formal practice, like this will be our formal practice, the more we do that in a consistent way, then we can take that practice out into the world, and it provides a great deal of peace of mind in everyday living. And that's really what we're after, what everybody wants, And I know when I started practicing, I treated it, I was a musician for many, many years, and I treated the practice like I practiced guitar. I practiced every day, and I wanted to practice meditation every day. And so a lot of us are disciplined that way. If we ever learned a language, same thing. If we don't use that new language, we lose it, So we have to keep it fresh. We have to keep using it. And meditation is exactly like that. So again, when I started practicing, and I did it on a consistent basis, I really started enjoying it. Not at first, because I was confused. Like, am I doing it right? I didn't have a teacher at first. Like, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? And then once I kind of got some instructions and felt like, I was on the right path, I felt every time I sat in meditation, I felt like coming home to a nice clean home that you like, not a dirty, messy home or anything like that. And if you have a home that you like, you open up the door, from a hard day of work, you open up the door and it's kind of like, oh, I'm so happy to be home, that kind of thing. I hope everybody experienced that. But that's what meditation is like. I mean, it should be like coming home. for us, because we're giving ourselves permission to turn off the outside world. We're closing our eyes. We're making everything pretty quiet. The temperature should be pretty nice. Feels good in here to me, anyway. Very little tactile, sensations. Hopefully, physically, we feel good, and so not much in the world to bother us. So we are going within to see what is happening within us. So every thought and every emotion, every feeling that comes up, there's a reaction within the body, and if we pay attention to that reaction, we are being mindful. Now, that's not a technique that everybody uses all the time, but if we aren't sure what to do in meditation, just notice our physical bodily reaction to emotions and thoughts and these types of things. And if we get totally lost, and we want to get a taste of what mindfulness is like, just ask yourself, what state am I experiencing at this moment? And there'll be a little bit of investigation, maybe even label it if you like, and then come back to your meditation object. And you can ask that periodically through your meditation practice. So these are just a few things that we can do to come back into this presence again and again, this mindfulness. And in the state of presence, it is ideally no thoughts of the past and no thoughts of the future, nothing that we're dwelling upon. I hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay, so we'll start a meditation here. I'll guide us through it. So if anybody's fairly new to meditation, just listen to the guiding, and then after the guiding, it'll be silent until the end. So please make yourself comfortable. Allow the eyes to close. And take a moment and thank yourselves and everyone else near you. Just thank yourselves for being here this evening, giving yourself this opportunity to go within. And so for a while we'll be the private investigator of our own minds and bodies, which is something that we don't always get a chance to do on an everyday basis. We wake up in the morning and sometimes have to rush off. Hopefully we can get a meditation in a little bit in the morning, and then we're out the door and off to work, many of us. And so throughout our day, if we don't actually make an intentional effort to be mindful, sometimes we kind of miss it. So when we're in silent meditation, this formal practice that we're doing now, we get an opportunity to watch the thoughts and watch our reaction to them. And sometimes they just play out and get very soft and kind of fade into the background. And then we can even go deeper into the practice. And sometimes there'll be repetitive thoughts. Repetitive feelings and emotions. And with these, we want to just take a little brief investigative look, check it out, and then come back to our meditation object, which is the breath. And so this breath is our anchor. And if we use the analogy of coming home, it's like every time we come back to the breath, it's like opening the front door of the house and letting ourselves in. And another way we can look at it is every time we come back to the breath, it's like sitting down on our most comfortable chair or couch in the house, giving ourselves a break from sometimes a hectic day that we've had. So when we're practicing Vipassana, we want to also practice our mindfulness skills. And any kind of emotions or thoughts that come up, and just watch our reactivity to it. In other words, remaining non-judgmental towards these things. Seeing things for what they are. And really seeing things in a non-dualistic way, where there's no decision about anything being right or wrong. Very little commentary about any of it. In fact, anytime that we hear that inner voice, we should ask ourselves not to get involved with it when we're doing this formal practice of meditation. We don't have to try to stop it or try to change it, just not get involved and not believe it in the moment. And if we find this difficult to do, we just simply come back a little harder to the breath and really notice the breath. And so the practice that we do here is very simple. We feel the breath someplace on the body. The breath is our friend, it's our go-to. Our attention wanders off from the breath. We notice where it wandered off to and just briefly touch that with our awareness. and then come back to the breath, and we just repeat this. If our attention keeps going to the same place repetitively, sometimes we want to pay a little bit closer attention to that. Sometimes just by noticing that it's future-based or something that has to do with something that happened in the past can be enough. The idea is to investigate it, accept it, and then to let it go. And all of this can happen in just a moment in time. And sometimes it's a little bit more work, but for the most part, it's just a fraction of a second is all it needs. So we just keep coming back to the breath again and again. The thoughts soften. And we try not to attach to anything. We could say that this is an open palm meditation where we're not grasping onto anything. And this provides a great deal of freedom and liberation for us. May each of us and all beings be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. May we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. And may we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or difficulties that we might face in life. Thank you, everyone. I hope you had a nice meditation. It was very, very quiet. I thought it was very nice. Thank you. So for you people that haven't been here before, we just hold these like the last 25 minutes for discussion and questions and answers, and just kind of open it up a little bit. But first, I want to just speak a little bit about my story, which is kind of hard for me to spew that out, because it's like I know that it benefits some people, and that's the only reason I'm doing it. They like to hear it. I don't know if it's inspiring. It's very hard for somebody to say that I've led an inspired life or anything like that. But it's primarily, I just want to talk about the aspect of meditation, and what brought me to the meditation plate, I guess you could say. I was always had an interest in meditation. Whenever I heard somebody speak of it, or saw it on TV, or read a little bit about it, or magazines or something, I had a really deep interest in it. Even as a young boy, I remember being interested in that kind of thing. And even I remember seeing David Carradine on Kung Fu. He was doing meditation. I thought, that is cool stuff, whatever it is, And actually, it was right around that time when I started meditating, like about right around 2090. I didn't have any instruction, as I mentioned before, so I really was lost. I didn't know, how to start or anything. There wasn't much of an internet back then, and there were books. And I went to the library and I read all the books on meditation and on Buddhism and Hinduism that I could get. But I was still very confused, and that kind of held me back from the practice, because I didn't know whether I was doing it correctly. A lot of us probably been there before. Am I doing this right? Sit there for a half hour asking yourself, am I doing this right? This can't be right. It's got to be more to it than this, or whatever. And then I did get some instruction eventually, and like I said earlier, also that I felt like I was really getting someplace, with the practice, and I just did it every day. Just, I can't remember at the time how much I was doing it. I do remember one of the first times I sat down to meditate, I didn't make it 5 minutes. I meditated, but I didn't make it 5 minutes, because I thought, oh, this is really a waste of time. I got things I got to do, which I thought was, much more important. Like, I don't know what it could have been, but then the next morning, I remember I was outdoors with my dog, and at the same place in the back, of the yard, and I sat down again and did the same thing. And then the next day, the same thing, and then eventually, the time just grew longer on its own. I just started enjoying it, and it started becoming more of a practice, more of a way of life eventually. And then I got some teachers. I was very lucky to find some teachers when I got out of Wisconsin. And then my teachers in Wisconsin, where I came from, were books. And then when I came out here, I was, as I mentioned, I was a musician, and I always worked in the music field. So I started working in a music store here in Mesa. This is 2000, basically 2000, year 2000. And I was at the counter, and there was a magazine there with this this nun that was coming, giving a talk at one of the bookstores here. And so I thought, well, that's interesting. A Buddhist nun. And so I went there, and she gave a talk, and I was just blown away. Genla Dekyung was her name, from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. And she's from Ireland. She was currently living in Flagstaff at the time, or Albuquerque at the time. And so I was really blown away. It wasn't her book, but it was her teacher's book that she was speaking of, and she was just a dynamic speaker. And so after that, I must have obtained some information. Maybe I got a business card or something like that, and I called her and I asked, how can a person receive teachings, from this stuff, for meditation and things like that. And she said that, put a group of people together, pay for a ticket, and then she would fly in and do a teaching, and then we fly her out the next day. Give her a place to stay, and then she'd fly out back to Albuquerque. And so we did that. There was about half a dozen of us. We'd pitch in and fly her in, and she would teach us, and then she'd fly out. And that later developed into what is called the Clear Light Buddhist Center. It still exists in town here. And I guess I'm proud to say that I was instrumental in putting that together, that same group that was put together, to fly in the teacher. And then since then, many different teachers have taken over. From there, I lost interest somewhat in Tibetan Buddhism because it was so ritualistic for me. All the prostrations or bowing, if you want to call it that, and a lot of it was kind of a English style of chanting that they were doing, and not enough meditation for me. So I had a book about Thailand, about the practices in Thailand and what they were doing there. So I got on an airplane and I went to Thailand. I wanted to visit Buddhadasa Bhikkhu's temple. He was a teacher that I was really interested in. Although he had passed, there was a lot of information there about him, and I wanted to see his temple where people were practicing this forest tradition, in Thailand. But when I got into Bangkok, they said that there were some Muslim, kind of uprising a little bit down there. I didn't even know they had Muslims in Thailand. I didn't know anything about it. But they said it'd be a good idea to go north. So I headed north up to Chiang Mai, if anybody knows about Thailand. And I ran into a group of people that were running retreats up there, meditation retreats. They weren't ordained, but they were very highly. They were excellent teachers. Let me just put it that way. And these retreats were huge. They'd have like 100 people attend them, and there would be maybe a dozen teachers, one main teacher or several main teachers and other teachers that would help out. And one of the teachers, when I showed up, I was the only Farang, or the only English person there, only English-speaking person there. So they gave me a special teacher. His name was Ajahn Parot, and he was my own personal teacher, and he was fantastic. I was just blown away by his teachings. He was very learned. He was an artist before dedicating his life to. He called himself a preacher. He borrowed that English term as a preacher, but he taught the Dharma, the Buddha Dharma, and but before that he was a artist who studied in France and spoke very good English. And so from that point, I would go to Thailand every April and every September of the next about 5 or 6 years to work with him and help him out with the retreats and just basically spend that time, learning about Buddhism from the Theravada, really pretty much what I consider the heart of Theravada Buddhism in Thailand itself, which came from, the Theravada Buddhist tradition is the teachings of the elders, so it's the Buddhism that isn't watered down, I guess you could say. It's the direct teachings, from the sutras, from the Pali. And so I was very, very interested, and they were doing a lot of meditation, which I liked, and it was everything I was looking for. When then eventually that teacher, Ajahn Perot, told me that when I go back to the United States, I should start teaching. And I thought, well, I was already doing a fair amount of teaching, but I wasn't doing it, to big groups or anything. And when I came back, I thought, oh, how am I going to do this? And then I met a friend of mine. I went to a yoga class, and he said, what do you do in Thailand? And I said, well, I'm learning about meditation. And he said, you should teach at my yoga studio. And so it happened just like that, like the week after I came back. And so I started teaching at Inner Vision Yoga. I don't know if anybody knows that. There's several of them around now. And then eventually other yoga studios, yoga places, and then different temples, namely the temple, the Arizona International Buddhist Meditation, Center in Mesa here. And I started teaching there, I think about 9 or 10 years ago now. So it's been quite a stint there. All that time, this place was here, but it wasn't as active as it is now. It wasn't things happening on a weekly basis or anything like that. And since then, in 2010, I wrote a book called Continual Breath Awareness. And I was actually looking for a copy. I know there's a copy of it someplace. I was looking for a copy of it in the other room when I was talking to Ryan. I said, I got to find something. Because I'm thinking about republishing it again.
What's the name of it?
Continual Breath Awareness.
Okay.
If you have a copy, let me know. I'm looking. But I know I have an electronic copy of it, but I know there's a hard copy. And then in 2011, I got, this is Joe's money here, that's not.
You made those two?
Right. And then we did Meditation, the Great Teacher, and Minding the Breath.
Yeah.
And a lot of you have seen these books. And those both came out in the year 2011. And another incredible thing that happened in 2011 for myself is I had been ordained twice as a monk, once in Thailand and then once in the States here. It didn't pan out for me. I wasn't prepared. I didn't get rid of all the stuff I should have got rid of, like houses and cars and relationships and all that stuff. So I was not prepared, but in 2011 I got offered the opportunity to become ordained as a Buddhist minister out of the Buddhist, I can't think of the acronym right now, but the Order of Buddhist Ministry out of Roseman, California. So that happened in 2011. And then another thing that happened in 2011 was meeting Bhante Gururatana, Bhante G, the author of the books that we were talking about earlier, Mindfulness in Plain English and Beyond Mindfulness in Plain English, and he has many, many more excellent books out. And the first time I met him was in Hawaii. And I was working with one of his students, Matthew Flickstein, for years before actually meeting Bhante Gururatana. But I heard all these wonderful things about Bhante, and I just wanted to meet him. So when I met him in Florida, we had this commonality that I had already started using his books for courses and programs, and we both had knew Matthew Flickstein, a very, very good friend of his, and my teacher at the time. So we spent many, many, many hours together. Actually, any kind of free time he had, I was with him. So it was a very unique situation. We go whale watching together, and after the retreat, not during the retreat, but and we spent a lot of time together. It was just an incredible experience. And then, not realizing it, but Bhante Ananda, the monk here, and Bhante Gudaratana were friends. And Bhante Ananda always told me, "Yeah, I know him. I know him." And I thought, well, of course you know him. Everybody, all the monks know him. But then he goes, "Yeah, I talked to Bhante Gudaratana. He's going to come here and teach." And I thought, yeah, I wonder when that'll happen. But he did actually set it up that Bhante Gudaratana was going to come here and teach. And he came. I think it was 2015, and then he came again later on that year. He visited twice in 2015, and again being able to spend just a huge amounts of time with him. If you ever get an opportunity to not only work with read his books and listen to some of his stuff on the internet, but go off to the Bhavana Society in Washington, his place, and retreat with him and the other monks. It'd be I'm sure you would enjoy it.
Washington State, I'm assuming?
It's West Virginia.
Washington State?
Yeah, no, it's in Virginia.
It's West Virginia.
Yeah,
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Just it's you have to fly into D.C. and then it's a 2-hour ride, into the forest. But they bought a big piece of forest there and then developed it some time ago, and they have a beautiful place. So I guess Bhante Gudaratana was probably one of my last, what I would consider teachers, people that I actually worked with. So I've been very, very fortunate, to be able to be with these people and just ask them questions, like direct questions. And it's kind of like, just imagine if you're in front of somebody like a truly awakened, enlightened person, and you had an opportunity to ask, kind of like a genie, right? You have an opportunity to ask like a question or even 3 questions or whatever. And it's like, what would you ask, Like, what's the meaning of life? Or, the old standard, And, but it was like that in many situations, for myself. So I feel very, very grateful, for all of that. And I'm sure there'll be more, opportunities ahead to work with different teachers and different people and things like that. But the one thing that happened to me early, I can't remember the date for sure, but it was probably 2002 or 2003 or something like that. Is I was meditating and I had like what I call a spontaneous past life regression that pointed to this experience that I had in approximately 1956, something like that, before I was born. And one of the reasons that I saw in that is the reason I was so interested in meditation is that in the last 10 days of my life, I was pushed or shoved off of a cliff, and I ended on a landing and injured my back really bad. And the only thing I could do, I was stranded on this shelf overlooking this huge abyss, no place to go, and I knew it. As soon as I came to, I knew I knew that would have been it, So the last 10 days of my life, just basically starving to death, but no pain or anything. Was the only thing I could do was sit in a posture similar to this, and think about my past life, and or the the past and the things that had happened in that fairly short life. But I didn't know anything about meditation, but yet that's what I was basically doing. And so I had that interest ever since I was a little boy. When I see somebody sitting in a lot of the depictions, is that the right word? Of people sitting in the Himalayas, these guys with these long beards, they're sitting with robes on, and they're sitting in these cross-legged postures. And I remember seeing that, thinking, yeah, that's interesting stuff. So, and looking back, that's really, it makes so much sense to me that where that interest, sparked, where it came from for myself anyway, from that experience. And that's about all I got for you right now. I want to, any questions or anything from anybody? Anybody want to share something? Anything at all?
I have a question. My question is, I just started meditating, and
Great.
I've been able to quiet my mind, but now I'm becoming aware of tension in my body. Is that normal when starting meditation?
Yeah. Is it from sitting in a posture that you're not used to?
Yeah,
That kind of
sitting
thing.
in the
Yeah.
posture. I'm just feeling like I just a bunch of tightness that I maybe have never been mindful to.
Yeah.
So not having any choice but to focus on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one thing, comfort is very important, of course. And the best thing you can do is sit high, and because the higher you sit, the more it is similar to sitting in a chair. And if you like to sit on the ground and be grounded, have that grounding feeling, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with sitting in a chair either. But if you want to sit on the ground, sit as high as you can, and then find that sweet spot. Your body will get used to all that, and it's just getting used to it. I remember going through the same thing. Wondering if I should lean against the wall and stuff. The key for me is the right cushion, though. Having the right cushion. Not this one. There's a cushion similar to this out here someplace that's kind of worn.
This one.
That one, yeah. That has been all over the world, actually. And that's, really bulky to take on an airplane, but yeah, right. But I've carried that under my arm. That would have been my carry-on luggage, going to these retreats and stuff, that cushion right there. So that's how important it is to have the right cushion. Even at the temple, when I teach over there, I bring a cushion from home that is like this, and I take that over there and I use that because having the right cushion is very, very important.
These.
Yeah, or not even, softer, yeah.
Yeah,
If anything too soft won't work. So it's like having your own lazy boy recliner, sort of.
Yeah, and once you find that right, and once you find the right cushion, it's just really good to just sit. And then you don't even want to get up.
And then your body really gets used to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it settles right in.
Thank you.
And then you have other things to think about.
Something else
Yeah.
will come up.
Yeah.
You can do it for a short time each
Yeah.
time and grow that time.
Yeah,
You don't have to, I must sit for half an hour like this, my knees are breaking.
Won't work.
You have to, just kind of work your way up to it. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, good
Sit much
question.
hell if you have to the first few months, and then just get used to it.
Anything else from anybody?
I think body pain is interesting because meditation is literally the only time that your body is ever still. Think about sleeping. How often do you go to sleep in the same position that you wake up in? Right? Because you're moving, even at night when you're sleeping, you're moving. So then you put your body in this position, sitting on a chair, or even sitting on a chair when you go on retreat. Somehow your body gets sore and you're not doing anything, right? It's just because it's an unusual thing that we're not used to.
Yeah, happens.
Mhm.
But that's
Even when we sleep,
Day.
we're constantly
Yeah.
moving.
yeah.
Day, night.
But that stillness in the body translate to the stillness of the mind. Remember our water and how it settled down. So our jar, the mind jar we could call it, is still a little cloudy, but you saw how clear it was before when it was shook up. But it wouldn't, if I was carrying that around, it would never settle down, and that's what happens to us. We have to settle, and we settle the body, and then the mind follows. It's just how it is, and it works. It's very healing. It's a very good practice. Anything else from anybody? Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for putting that in there. So again, we got those 2 programs next Monday. Next is Ryan's 6-week, and then next Tuesday is NT's free workshop. I know Deborah signed up for it. I saw that before I left here. And then Ryan will be teaching here next Wednesday. So thank you for doing that ahead of time. And we will be in Belize. Yeah, in the jungle with the monkeys. So.
You can't YouTube or do the video from over there so I can watch it right here?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's.
To confiscate your phone, right?
Pardon me. Was there
I'm
some?
just saying. No, I'm just saying. I hope Terry's leaving her phone behind.
Oh. Just a reminder, if check into YouTube from time to time if you want. There's all of these are on there, but they're edited down. The meditations are a little bit shorter, and the talk is edited, so there's not a lot of garbage on there. But check it out if you get a chance. There's like I don't know, total the number of YouTube videos. They're not all private, but there's over 300 videos. You can if you go to meditation gathering, I'm sure these would come up. Otherwise, like Shane Wilson meditation, or just Shane Wilson, that'll come up too. So check it out. Yeah, and then if there's anything I can ever help you with, just send me an email or let me know, and I'd be happy to help you with your practice. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming.